Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 4. And week 4 is such a fun week because we get to go over budgets and financing. And that is what Chef Jonathan and I get to go over this week. Am I right, Chef Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm so excited about this week.
Yay! And wanted to point out for you guys, let me share my screen. Remember, your week 3 late assignments, they're due tonight. Get them in at 11:59 p.m. Oh, I have week 4 hat. That was supposed to be last week's thing. I can fix that. And your week 4 assignment is due on Tuesday. And I wanted to point out to plan ahead because your makeup assignments are due in week 5. So your makeup assignments are due week 5. And hold on, I was trying to be sleuthy, but I am not doing well with computers right now. Remember, week 5 is right here. Week 5 is when all of these makeup assignments are due. Remember, only one makeup assignment per box. So you have makeup assignment 1, makeup assignment 2, and you need to say what week you are making up. So when you submit, put week 2, week 1, week 3, whatever you're putting in here, you need to make certain you put that in there along with your link. And it's especially important to plan ahead, especially with this class, because you, like I said in the beginning, you guys are very special. This is the last time this class is actually going to be given. The next time Chef Jonathan and I get to be together will be in September. So let's make certain everybody is successful and gets on to the next class. And why is that, Maurice? Is because they are changing this class. So that means that you would actually, they're changing it to a different, it's still going to be an entrepreneurship class, but they're changing it to fit the new program. So that's why it's really important that everybody is successful in this class and not put off doing your makeup assignments. Get your work in. If you did accidentally miss a knowledge check or a discussion, now is the time to get those done, especially that discussion. You can still get it done for late points. And tell me that you do it because, you know, I do have to go back and grade those. So let me know when you actually make up that stuff. And how was week 3 assignments looking this week, Chef?
Good. I love that I got to see a whole bunch of different kind of takes on creating a schedule. Everybody approaches making a schedule in a little bit different way because everybody has different priorities when it comes to their own business. And so it can be a really fun exercise to see a lot of different people put together a schedule for the same business, which this is even better because everybody has their own business. So it's always really fun to see this assignment. One of the more common stumbling blocks that I saw was missing your concept summary right at the top there, or missing some key information in that concept summary. This is really important. That's why we had to do it back in week 1, writing that 1 to 3 sentence summary with all that information, location, city and state, the hours of operation, what type of an operation, what type of service you're going to have. Because if you're going to have a restaurant, but it's more like Chipotle, you're not really going to need servers. If you're going to have a fine dining restaurant with table service, or even family style with table service, you're going to need an entirely different staff for that type of restaurant than for a different type of restaurant. That's why all that information really comes together in that concept summary and is applied in different ways in each of these assignments. So it's really important that you have those concept summaries on there. That being said, week 4 is the only week where you get a break from including that. So if you need to go back and make sure that you have that readily accessible, this is a great week to get that figured out. Otherwise, yeah, that was probably the most common stumbling block.
Thanks. And remember that your late submissions are due tonight at 11:59 p.m. So get those in. Get as many, you'll get it's that late submission time, so get as many points as you can, right?
And if you did submit it and you need to make some corrections, you didn't get 100% if you submitted first time before Tuesday, or an 85% if you submitted Wednesday or Thursday, then you can still resubmit to get those missing points. Just make those corrections and then resubmit just the same way you did the first time, and I'll be able to see I need to go back and take another look, and I can give you up to full credit if it was an on-time submission. So really great opportunity. You have until Tuesday to do those resubmits, so definitely make sure you take advantage of that.
Perfect. Exactly. Does anybody have any questions right now before we begin on the awesomeness of budgets? Anybody? No? I see a no in the chat. Now remember, when it comes to budgets, you guys do this all the time. You do it in your head every single time. Like every day. You make money and you got to pay your bills. And then you get to decide what you can and cannot afford. Like, can you buy a t-shirt at Target? Are you going to buy that t-shirt at Target for $10? Or are you going to try to buy something from Nordstrom that's like $150? What's going to work for you? What do you want it to be? And you're doing the same thing, but now for your business, which is why it's important to know what you actually, what your concept's going to be. Because if you're going to do a high-end 5-star Michelin rated restaurant, you are going to be budgeting differently than a food truck, than a personal chef, than a baker, than a family restaurant. So it's all about knowing what your concept's all about and being able to really know your numbers. And it's really important to know this for your investors, and not just as a business owner. You need to know these type of things for a manager, like being a manager, being a executive chef. This is really going to help you throughout your career. And like I said, you guys already do this in your head. We're just now going to do it for the business, and you have to do it in writing now. You have to keep records. Am I right, Chef? And you know who's an actual wizard at numbers? Oh, I got all fuzzy. Wizard at numbers is Chef Jonathan. So give it up to Chef Jonathan right now.
So when you're making that budget and you're kind of keeping that balance together, that's called a P&L for a business. That's really the long and short of what a P&L is, a profit and loss sheet. It'll tell you what your sales are, your revenue. So that's kind of like your paycheck. Your business's paycheck is the sales that they do. That's the money coming into the bank. And then all the costs, you got to buy more food to keep serving that food. You got to buy more alcohol, beer, wine, non-alcoholic beverages. You got to pay your people. You got to pay for the place that you're in, or your food truck, or your commissary kitchen, or any number of things that you have to pay for with one of these other concepts. Those are all your bills going out. That's kind of the same deal as your home finances. Just for a business, it's a little more structured in this profit and loss sheet. It shows you where your business is financially. So I kind of want to show you these slides. These have some wonderful, wonderful information in them, and they're definitely worth checking out. But for now, I want to focus on the assignments. So if you want to check those out, they're right here underneath the live session on our class page. So definitely check those out when you get a chance. But this is our assignment. And our assignment for this week is actually looking at a profit and loss sheet. And not just one, but three. So you have Janet's Grand Events Catering, Jamie's Waffle Wagon, and Poor John's Pub. So three different businesses, and you're going to look at all three of them and answer the same questions for all three businesses. So,
and real quick before you begin, Chef Jonathan, I just want to share my screen. Remember, for your assignments, you have to click here, and then you're clicking on this right here, the red thing that says profit and loss sheet. You're making a copy of it, and that is how you're going to get access to this. You have to click on this right here, okay? Just want to make sure that we pointed that out. All right, and go.
So, as a quick overview of a profit and loss, right at the top here, we've got revenue. Now, like I said, that's going to be your money coming in. That's your paycheck. So all of these numbers are money coming in. And then everything below that is money going out. These are all your bills. So you have your cost of goods sold. So this is how much you spent on the product that you actually sold that week or that month, however long this time period is for this profit and loss report. You have your total labor cost. That's going to be how much you're paying for your people. You have your operating costs, which is a whole nother category. And then finally at the bottom, you have this net profit and loss. So my recommendation when you're looking at your own profit and loss sheet for your business is start at the bottom, because that gives you the really big picture. How is my business doing at the end of the day? Am I making money? Am I losing money? Or am I breaking even? So when it's at a zero like this, you're breaking even. You're not making any money, but you're not losing any money either. Not the worst place, not the best place. If this is a negative number, like say Jamie's Waffle Wagon over here, that means you're operating at a loss. So you're spending more than you're making. So that gives you kind of the big picture. After that, I would look at category totals. So total operating cost, $1,400, right? Now, when I'm looking at a category total, who can tell me how much I want to be spending on, say, food cost? What percentage do I want to have?
What are those awesome numbers that we always say, like in cost controls and in menu management by design? What is that little formula? Oh, look at you, Samantha.
All over it, yep.
Boom.
So 30% for each of these categories, right? So you want to have your labor cost at 30% or lower. So 29, 28, 5%. These are all good numbers. 32, 33, that's so-so. Anything over 35 is really getting to be a pretty big problem, right? With food cost. In this class, we're going to go a step beyond just food cost. And we're talking about total cost of goods sold, total COGS, C-O-G-S. So this number should be 30%. And that's accounting for not only your food, but your beverage program too. So this is looking at a much bigger picture of your business. So when I say 30%, how do I figure out that 30%? Divide. Samantha, you're all over this. That's right. So you're going to take your category total and you're going to divide, let's do labor cost here. You'll divide 2550 by your total revenue. Remember, Everything is in comparison to your revenue, your sales, because you really want to know how much of the money that's coming in is going right back out to your people, right? So we're going to divide it by our total revenue, 5560. And that gives us this number here. As that quick reminder, this is a percentage as a decimal. You just got to move that decimal place 2 places to the right. You got it, Maurice. Thank you. So this would be 46%. So what do you guys think? Problem? Not problem? High. You're right, Maurice. It's really high. So what do I do about that? How can I reduce my labor cost? Do you guys have any ideas?
And remember, before you say anything, remember that you have also been a worker. So don't just say, well, I'm going to cut everybody's salaries in half. Because if you were making $14 an hour and then your boss comes to you and says, well, we need to cut, you know, expenses, so I'm going to only pay you $10 an hour, are you going to be pissed? You're going to be mad. Yeah, you're going to be mad. So remember that you have been working all your lives also. So what would you do as an employee? Like, would you be mad if your employer came up to you and said, well, we're just going to make you do the same amount of work, but for less money? How does that sound? Not going to be happy. So remember that for when you're looking at solutions. Am I right, Jeff?
Absolutely. So in the chat, I'm seeing waste, and that's definitely something to look at if we're talking about, say, food cost or beverage costs. But with labor, you're probably not going to have that waste problem as much. So remember last week, what was the biggest thing you wanted to avoid on your schedule? Go ahead, Bertha.
Overtime.
Overtime, huge, huge, huge expense. So if labor cost is a problem, the first place I would look is if there's overtime happening. So as this assignment goes, we just identified a cost problem, right? Our labor cost is a big problem at 46% even. The more detail you can give me, the better. So we just talked about overtime. Now, what do you think I'm going to say if you just write overtime here? Need more. You got it, Samantha. So, how do I address overtime? How would I reduce the amount of overtime that my employees are putting in? Getting part-timers in can absolutely be a huge thing. Not clocking out for breaks or clocking in early, yes. So watching for time clock abuse. That can really add up. Those little 5 minutes here and there. I loved it as an employee, but then as soon as I was a manager, I realized how much money I was actually costing. So watching people's clock in and out times and making sure that they're actually clocking out for their breaks. Another thing is, if you schedule someone for exactly 40 hours a week, what happens if they have to stay late one day? They're going to be in overtime immediately. So what I would recommend is scheduling 40 hours without accounting for those lunch breaks. Because if they're working, say, 5 days a week, that gives you an extra 2.5 hours to work with, right? That is usually enough time to prevent overtime if they're scheduled for, say, 35, like Maurice said. Between 35 and 37.5 hours is about what I would schedule a full-time employee for, because that helps me to avoid that overtime unless something really dire happened. And then I've got bigger problems, right? So those are great answers for how to address overtime. And notice they're all actionable. If you told me to do that, I could actually do that. If you just said overtime, I would be like, okay, sure. What do I do about it? Because remember, you're a consultant here. You're telling these business owners how to fix their problems. So you want to make sure that it's actionable steps, things that they can actually do. So scheduling for 35 hours is a great way to do it.
And also remember too, when you're looking at this, good time, like a good chunk of the time, if you're a manager, you are walking into this scenario. You're seeing this for the first time. I know Chef Jonathan has definitely gone through this. I have gone through this where all of a sudden I walked in, and these were numbers. I didn't have any control over the numbers before, but now I had to figure out a plan to fix it. And how is it going to actually get better? And you're going to have to do this a good chunk of the time as a manager, especially if you're moving to a new place. So in like a new business, or, you got that new job, you're super excited. Now you get to, potentially clean up the mess. So that's why it's really important to look at all of these. I know Chef Jonathan has definitely gone through this.
Oh, big time. Lots and lots. Every single account I've gone into has had, or restaurant for that matter, has had a labor cost problem. So definitely lots of experience here. Maurice, I love that you brought up cross training. That can bring down your labor in a huge, huge way. Because if you have, let's say, 4 stations in your kitchen, and you have 4 employees who each know one of those stations and only one of those stations, what happens when you have 2 tables in the dining room? You still need to have all 4 of those cooks on for maybe 6, 8 people. It's going to kill you on labor during that slow time. But if your employees are cross-trained, then they can work multiple stations when things are slow and still execute it well. And then as your business picks up during your rushes, you can have more employees come in and have 1 person on each station and stagger that entrance and stagger the exit so that you can cut labor both at the beginning of the shift and the end of the shift when things are slower. So I love that you brought that up. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Remember, don't just say cross-training as your solution. Tell me why that's going to address that labor cost problem. So, just to show you, for our solution for overtime, this is about what I'd be looking for. This gives me specific things that I can do about that overtime issue, and that'll bring down my labor cost, right? Now, with this business, this is a catering company as well. So you can also go a step further and talk about catering companies specifically. Labor is going to work a little differently with a catering company than it is with a restaurant or a food truck. So maybe you have salaried managers doing all the prep earlier in the week and you're only bringing in hourlies for the event and the day of the event to actually execute the menu that you've already created. Then you're not paying hourlies all the time. You're paying your salaried managers who are getting paid the same no matter how many hours they work. There are ways to do that. You don't want to abuse your salaried managers. There is a balance to be struck there, for sure, and you want to be really careful about that. But it can be a really good solution if you're reasonable about it.
I like how you put "if you're reasonable about it" in there. Like if, because remember, I mean, there have been jobs where they wanted me to be the manager, and I just flat out refused because I knew I made more money than the actual managers. Because they're like, yeah, work at 90 hours, it'll totally be fine. That's another reason why we told you in the assignment for week 3's assignment, not to go over 60.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
So do you guys have any questions about labor cost and before we move on here? Seems like the chat is the place to be today, so I'm going to wait a minute.
Yeah. Remember that it is 2 cost problems and 2 solutions for each problem. You want 2 solutions, because what happens if that first problem, like that first solution you came up with, ended up being a dud? It didn't work. You want to have a backup. You always want to keep the circle going. Remember that plan, do, check, act, nice little rotation thing that I showed you all the way back in week 1? You're doing the same thing here. So remember, have multiple solutions. Any questions so far? No, I see no in the chats. No.
All right.
All right.
Well then, here we go. So this gives me a reason behind cross-training. And I've got my cost problem and 2 solutions for that labor cost problem. So next, let's talk about operating costs. This is that miscellaneous category, operating costs, other costs. I've heard chefs refer to this in a lot of different ways. It's kind of the catch-all for everything that's not your people or your product. Anything else is going to go here. So this is broken out into individual costs. And that's really important to do because it allows you to track when something is higher than it should be. The one thing is rent. When you guys rent an apartment or pay a mortgage on a house, does your rent change month to month?
No.
Can you go to your landlord and say, hey, I know I agreed to pay $1,000 a month, but I really want to pay $500? Not really. You're locked into a lease, right? Or a contract. And the same is true for a business. The big difference is with a business, with a commercial kitchen, a restaurant space, you're typically not talking month to month. You're typically not working with a 6-month lease or a year lease or a 2-year lease. You're usually looking at 5 to 10-year leases. So this is why it's really important to shop around, work with an awesome real estate agent who specializes in commercial properties before you sign a lease on a space, because you're not going to be able to change that down the road. You're in a contract and it is typically prohibitively expensive to get out of it. And so because of that, rent is not going to be one of your cost problems on any of these businesses because they're stuck with it. There's nothing they can do about it.
Well, and they're cheap. I mean, God.
They're also cheap.
$600, yeah. I would like cry with happiness if I could get $600 a month for rent for a commercial kitchen around here in Fort Collins. My husband's a real estate agent, so what Chef Jonathan was saying is legit. Be friends with a real estate agent, because the average, like I go and I look at, like, because my husband does both residential and commercial, and the average price right now for commercial space for a kitchen is $8,000 a month. $8,000 a month. So remember that when you're looking at $600. I would be like, I'm on it. I don't even have a concept, but I'm gonna lease this property.
I was recently looking in the Denver area at some different commercial restaurant spaces just for fun. And it was about $32 per square foot. Per square foot. Think about that. That's enormously expensive.
But does that include all the extras too? Because they always start, remember, they'll show you per square foot and then that's just like the base price. But then kind of to look at it like you're shopping for a car. You get that car and that's like, oh, this is the base price. But if you want all those extra added features that we forgot to mention, like it's actually going to be this much instead. So when it starts off at 32, it'll like end up being like $45 per square foot. Like,
I
so
found 59.
59? Yeah, I can believe it. I can believe it.
So be aware of these things, guys, when you're looking at rent, when you're looking at cable. If you're a sports bar, for instance, cable is going to be a contract, and it's different from your home cable. It's much more expensive, and you are locked into a contract in a big way. So, and it's something your business cannot exist without. You depend on that cable as a sports bar. So it's something that you want to be very careful about before you sign a contract, because it's going to be really difficult to change that down the road. A lot of things in this operating cost category fall under that same heading. So the next line here is utilities. Now there's a lot of things that you can do to bring down your utility bill a little bit and be a little more green, which are fantastic. But let's face it, working in a commercial kitchen, you're going to use a lot of water. You're going to use a lot of gas. You're going to use a lot of electricity, and you should. It helps you to keep a clean and safe environment in your kitchen, not only for your staff, but for your employees. So you can make small changes that will make small differences, but you're not going to have a significant impact on utilities at the end of the day. Same goes for waste removal. Probably not the place to focus your attention on. Usually it's a contract that you're locked into. So I wouldn't spend too much time thinking about the waste removal aspect or the insurance aspect of it. Insurance is a necessity. You cannot get by without it in a business, really any business. But there's so much liability involved in a restaurant, food truck, catering company, personal chef, you name it, you're working with food, which can make people get sick. People can die. People can slip and fall and hurt themselves. People can sue you for no particular reason at all, as far as you can see. That's what your insurance is for. And it is a really crucial part. So you really can't get by without it. So I wouldn't focus too much attention there either. With marketing, this is a really good one that we're really going to talk in depth about next week. Open up a me, myself, and I catering business. So I'm not quite sure what you mean, Maurice. Can you give me a little more detail? I am going to keep talking about marketing real quick, though. Marketing budget is, you're going to want to spend a good amount of money on marketing, because that's what's going to continue to bring more revenue in, more customers, new people coming in, and increase that revenue, hopefully. So in addition, all three of these marketing costs are pretty low. $150, $150 here, and $150 here. So all three of these businesses really aren't spending that much money on marketing in any of these. So I wouldn't focus too much on that, and we're really going to talk about this in depth next week about why it's so important to spend some good money on marketing and how much that's going to cost. So stay tuned. That leaves us with equipment repairs. Equipment repairs you can totally do something about if it's high enough to really focus on it. So, you know, there's a lot of different things that can go wrong with your equipment. If you buy used equipment, I would plan on repairing it. If you buy old equipment, I would plan on repairing it pretty quick. Payments if leased, absolutely. If you lease your equipment, that can be a great solution to, I don't know how to fix equipment, so I'm going to lease it from somebody who does, and I'm going to pay more over time for that same equipment, but they're going to take care of all the problems with that equipment. So that's a really great solution, Samantha, if you ever find that equipment repairs is a problem. Another
That's a
thing
big
is
one for dishwashers too. Like if
dish,
that's the big one where you'll see being leasing equipment for is dishwashers, because that's just such a hassle if that thing breaks and you want it fixed immediately, because you're gonna cry if you have to pull out the triple sink and actually wash every single dish by hand. So you will see a lot of people leasing equipment for dishwashers.
another one is an ice machine.
Yeah.
That is a really expensive piece of equipment to fix, and they notoriously break down frequently. So just think about that. So some solutions for equipment repairs, as Samantha was saying, you can rent equipment, and that can be a really great solution. Another thing is, if your equipment's always breaking down, might be your staff doesn't know how to use it. So you might want to train your staff on how to use it right. Maybe maybe you just need to replace it because it's really old equipment. At some point, all equipment is going to die on you, and it's just not going to be worth it to keep repairing it, and you're going to want to replace it. And there are some different ways to fund that and to kind of write off that expense month by month as a business. But a big one is take part of your profit and stick it in the bank for a rainy day. Big important thing as a business is to have that rainy day fund. Your business floods, you probably don't want to wait for an insurance investigation and a check to come in the mail and all the nonsense that comes with waiting for them to do it for you. Chances are you're probably going to spend money out of your emergency fund to get it cleaned up and get opened up again so you can start making money again. And then the insurance will catch up with you and reimburse you later on. This can be a really good way of doing it. Obviously, work with your insurance company when situations come up. Again, really important reason to have insurance. But so kind of to recap that whole category, there is nothing I can do about most of this category. And equipment repairs on Janet's catering here, we're talking 50 bucks. That is definitely not something I would worry about. 50 bucks is pretty low. So just to double check though, let's do that math on this category. Total operating cost, and remember to find that cost percentage, I'm gonna take that cost, $1,400, and divide it by my revenue, which is just off my screen here. Total revenue here, 55, numlock is on, 55.60. So it's at a 25% cost. Good or bad for Janet's Catering Company on operating costs?
I would say good.
And I wholeheartedly agree. Anything under 30, you're good. So clearly, our second cost problem is not going to be operating costs. So now let's talk about cost of goods sold. So let's start with total cost of goods, just to get a general idea of where we are with this category. We'll take that 1610 and divide it by our total revenue, 55.60. And we see that we have a 29% food cost, or sorry, not food cost, cost of goods sold. So we're still below that 30%. So you would think this is a good category, right? Not quite. You want to keep digging in. Once you have the general picture, you want to dig into those details and look at each one individually. And cost of goods sold is really unique because you have a direct number to compare it to. So you can take a look at just your food cost and just your food sales. Remember, at the top is our sales. And the reason we break out our sales this way is exactly for this purpose. When we're looking at our costs, If we just had this total cost of goods sold number, we wouldn't be able to see if there's a problem in any of these individual categories. But by breaking out our sales into these different categories and having our costs broken out in the same way, you can directly compare these. Maurice, preventative maintenance on equipment is incredibly important. Always, always, always do it. Thank you for that again. Especially refrigerators. So we can compare food costs, and we can look straight at food costs. We're spending $900 on food, and we're selling that $900 in food for $4,710. So real quick, just looking at those two numbers, do you think we're at a pretty good food cost, or are we in trouble here?
I see kinda in the chat.
Okay. No, that's totally cool. That's why we have the calculator. Because just looking at the numbers, I cannot do this math in my head at all. And I like numbers. So that's why we pull out the calculator and we do 900 divided by our food sales, 4,710. And I see that we're at a 19% food cost. So Janet's catering company here is doing kind of awesome with food cost. This is fantastic, right? So then we can look at wine cost. And we're spending $600. And we're making $200 off of that $600 in wine. So you're going to divide cost, $600, divided by sales, $200. And I get 3. A weird number for a percentage, right?
Yeah, chef, totally weird number. That's really high.
Yeah, so what percentage would that actually be?
Remember that? You still have to move that decimal place over. It's that 3.00. You're moving it over. So it's what is it? Yes, 300%.
Yeah. Janet is getting killed on wine, right? If you see a number over 1 when you do that cost divided by sales, that means that you are operating at a loss because you still have to move that percentage, that decimal place over. So in wine, she's actually spending 3 times more than she's making. So let's go ahead and call that our second cost problem. Wine cost at 300%, which just kind of breaks my heart to even write down.
So how do you guys think that happened? How do you think that actually happened, where they spent 300%? How do you think that happened?
Overpouring, stealing.
Stealing? Yeah. Pouring too much?
I would just say excessive use.
Excessive use?
Okay, yeah. So how do I address that issue? Let's say overpouring. What do I want to put down for my solution?
To manage pours, or manage the amount that's per glass or per customer or something.
Yeah, but even more specific. I know now that my staff is pouring 6 ounces instead of 4 ounces. How do I fix that?
Proper training.
Training, huge, huge, huge piece of the puzzle here. So if I feel that one solution is that maybe we're having an overpouring, address over pouring by, and then that solution. Training staff on proper portion control.
Because it can easily say, pour this person a glass of wine, and you said glass. You didn't say what kind of glass. And if I poured this all the way up to here, that's a lot of wine. I'm gonna have a great night. Horrible morning. Great night and a horrible morning. So, you know, that's where doing training and putting those policies and procedures is really in place is really, really important. And you want to say what type of glass you're going to use, how much to actually do. Ooh, stop staff consumption. Look at you, Maurice.
Which goes back to, I would put that in the same category as what Samantha said earlier, stealing. If my staff is drinking my wine and I didn't tell them they could, they are stealing from me. That's a problem because wine is expensive, right? On the clock is even worse. I would be livid.
But I have worked at places though where they're like, oh yeah, drink as much as you want, and then they wonder why they're closed now because they let all of the staff drink as much as they wanted.
Yeah, so I've also worked at places where front of house staff in particular are encouraged to drink while they're on the clock, and that can be approached well, where they're having a sip of a new wine at the beginning of a shift so that they can explain that wine to their guests. It can also be approached poorly, where they're taking shots with your guests all through their shift, and by the end of it, they have no idea what's going on in the business and can barely stand up. I've seen it go down both ways, and so there's a right way and a wrong way to do that. And typically, you don't want them having any alcohol in their system when they're on the clock, ever. You want to do those kind of tasting things at the end of a shift right before they go home, and all the guests are gone, because then they will experience that drink and be able to describe it without affecting their job performance and without making you liable for anything that happens while they're on the clock with workers' comp insurance. Once again, insurance, good things. Yes, so anyway, let's talk about theft in that one. So I think that theft is a problem. Theft by, how do I address that? How do I fix my staff stealing from me?
What did you guys have to do, make certain of for your week 3 assignment? What was one of the key things that you needed to be certain of for your week 3 assignment? I see Samantha said watch employees. Who's watching the employees?
Management, coworkers.
Management.
So that's a really great solution. Another one, and I really highly recommend this, is cameras. And it's hard to do this in a kitchen that doesn't have cameras and has been around for years. They do not, the employees feel it, it's saying that you don't trust them. And there's an argument to be made there, but it is really important for your business to have those cameras, because what if somebody walks in the back door? What if your guests get in a fight with each other, or worse, with your employees? You want to have that on camera so that when the cops come, you can say, here's what happened. Go get them. Keep them away. So they can be a really good safeguard for you and your business and your employees and everyone. Having cameras in place and having them be visible so that everybody knows they're there can be a really good deterrent to anything happening in the first place. So just something to think about. But if you are having a theft problem and you have cameras, through management supervision, sorry, I forgot to write that one down, and installing cameras and reviewing tapes regularly, right? Once again, if you told me to do this, I would know exactly what to do to bring my wine cost down. I have steps that I can take that I can actually do here. That's what we're looking for with these cost problems and solutions, is give me the general cost issue here, and this should be from these numbers over here, and then give me solutions that I can actually act on if I were that manager. So you're gonna do this exact thing for all three of these businesses: Janet's Grand Events Catering, Jamie's Waffle Wagon, and Poor John's Pub here. And then you only have to answer this last question once, because you're going to choose one of these three businesses and tell me which one has the most potential to profit and why. As a hint, there's no wrong answer here. It's all about the why. If you explain why you think Jamie's Waffle Wagon is the most profitable, has the most potential for profit, or John's Pub, or Janet's Catering, chances are, if you've defended your answer well, you're going to get full credit here. But I am going to let Chef Rachel really talk about this question in a little more detail.
Laquana, real quick, what's your question?
When only choosing one, will we have to do the figurations of the problems to see which one of all three, to see which is profitable, more profitable? Or, yeah?
Well, remember, you've got to, this is going to come last. So you've already identified at least 2 cost problems for each of those businesses, and you've provided 2 solutions for each of those cost problems on each of those businesses. So in total, that means I want to see 6 cost problems and 12 solutions for this assignment, plus that second question. So you'll have already dug through each one of these profit and loss sheets, and you'll have something to work from just looking through those for your first answers.
Okay, thank you.
And remember, when we're looking, this is not a good reason to say why Janet is going to be successful. This right here is just, this is, well, she's the closest to, you know, 0, and she's not losing any money, so she's going to be, has the most potential. That's not going to always be the case. This number could change next month. She could be in the whole $10,000 by next month. So you don't want to just look at this number. You have to look at the whole picture. Am I right, Chef?
Yes, and I'm so glad you said that, because the net profit and loss line is a summary. It is not a cost problem. Even though 2 out of 3 of these businesses are operating at a loss, that is not a cost problem. We're looking for more specific than that. So
yeah, and you want to have, you know, look at the whole picture. You have to read the delightful little summary, look at the numbers, and my example to you will be the B&B. When I took it over, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. But I believed in that business. I believed that we had a great location, that the facility layout was really nicely done, that we had an established name in the community, but I needed to make changes. I needed to make changes and adjustments and create solutions in order for it to become profitable. So I looked at our menu. The previous owners did not put bacon or sausage on the menu at a bed and breakfast. That was the #1 complaint, was no bacon or sausage. So I revamped the menu. I looked at our customer service. I looked at our marketing because we had no marketing. It was like the first website ever created kind of thing. It was Pepto-Bismol pink and doilies everywhere. It was horrible. And with that, I was able to make a profit, and we were able to become extremely profitable. And that is the type of answer in detail that Chef Jonathan is going to want for this assignment. I said why I believed in it. It didn't have to do with the fact that the net profit was 0. If that was the case, I wouldn't have gone with the B&B because it was horribly in debt. And I came up with what I felt were the reasons why it had that potential and how I was going to fix it, so that we could become profitable. And that's the type of thing Chef Jonathan is going to look for here, because every single one of these has that ability to be profitable. Every single one. But you have to sell it. Pretend that we're investors. Make us believe your dream. Right? Right, Jeff?
Yes, please, please. This is a really important piece, and it's kind of where you bring it all together. And remember, this is a comparison question. So saying, for instance, Poor John's Pub has the most revenue. That doesn't actually answer that question, because you haven't talked about why that sets Poor John's Pub up to be more profitable than the other 2 businesses. You haven't talked about the other 2 businesses at all. Maybe you want to say Jamie's food truck has the most easily fixed problems. Sure, but you want to talk about why those problems are easier to fix than Poor John's Pub or Janet's Grand Events. Be specific, talk about why this one specifically is the winner in your mind. And like I said, there's no wrong answer as long as you defend it well.
All right. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody?
Not at this time.
Not at this time? No? Okay. And then what is due at the end of week 5?
All makeup.
All makeup work. Look at you. Yes, all makeup work is due. Am I right, Jeff?
Yes, please. And 5 assignment. Just before we go, I do want to remind you guys, if you've already submitted, you can resubmit until Tuesday night at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you haven't submitted yet, shame on you, and make sure to get it in before midnight tonight. You still have time. But the earlier you get these assignments in, the more time you have to resubmit and reach out and ask questions. So my recommendation would be start to take a look at it tonight, tomorrow, start to work on it, because this might require a little bit of thought, and you might want to come back to it a couple times before submitting it. So submit early, resubmit as needed. That's really kind of all I got.
All right, guys. Well, I hope everybody had a fun time in this week's live session. I love numbers. And remember, like we said before, you guys have already been doing this. Now we're just doing it for a business, and you have to write it down instead of doing it in your head. Because I don't know about you, but I always do it in my head, my finances. My husband has to write it down because I can easily be like, well, honey, we can't do this because of blah, 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 blah. And then he gives me a blank stare look of like he has no idea what I just said kind of thing. So that's why it's important to look at these type of things. I will also I have a slide for you guys that I will go into detail about in a nice little video that gives you these two links, which are great for when you are wanting to actually start your own business. They give you a slew of different financial analysis sheets and everything that you're going to kind of need for your business. And these ones are actually free. So I will do a video for you guys about that. And so watch your emails for that. And I hope everybody has a fabulous week. I hope you have a fabulous week, Chef Jonathan.
You too. And if you guys have any questions, please, please, please feel free to reach out. Always happy to help.
Yeah, we're just a text message, meme, GIF away. So just reach out, okay? And have a fantastic night, guys. Bye, everyone.